Today we're going to be talking about one- and two-step inequalities. And inequalities are going to be a lot like equations. Inequalities, what we're talking about is the greater than or less than symbols, or greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to symbols. And so we're going to solve these exactly like we would equations, so we're still going to be following all those steps. However, we've got two new rules. And so our first rule, if you did the warm-up today, was we learned that anytime you multiply by a negative, multiply or divide by a negative number, then you flip the inequality symbol. So it'll flip from a greater than to a less than. The other rule that we're going to learn today is that our final answers, we really want them to be on the left. We want the variable to be on the left. So the x or whatever the letter is, we want it to be on the left in our final answer. And the biggest reason for this is because when we have to graph it, it helps us it makes graphing a lot easier. All right, so we're just going to dive into this real quick. So when we start talking about that, when you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip the inequality symbol. Kids tend to want to flip the inequality symbol every single time they do something. And so that's what we really want you to start off seeing, is that you don't do that. And so notice my problem right here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line right through the middle, just like we normally would. This is like the equal sign. I'm going to circle my x. And I've only got one thing to get rid of, and so that's the +3. So how do you get rid of a +3? Oh, well, we would -3. And our golden rule, if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. So just like equations. And so these will cancel out, and we have x is less than, and then -9 and -3. If you don't know how to do this, please make sure you're using your calculator. The rule is, if the signs are the same, you add and keep the sign. So we're going to add 3 + 9 is 12, and this would be a -12. Now I get some kids that say, oh, that's a negative number, I'm going to flip this. No. The question is did we ever multiply or divide by a negative? And we did not. We subtracted 3, but we didn't multiply or divide by a negative. And so nothing flips, and this is your answer right here. X is less than 12. And then we're going to graph it. Now, everybody does their graphs differently. If you have to draw your own graph, then what we like to do is to put the number that we got for our answer right here, and then we're going to draw a circle. Now, the question is, do we leave the circle like this, which is called an open circle, or do we fill it in, which is called a closed circle? And the way you tell is if there's an equal to bar, then you fill it in. Okay? It's a closed circle. If there's no equal to bar, then that means it's an open circle. So we're going to leave this open because there's no equal to bar. Now, I will say, especially with negatives, you got to remember that negatives go backwards, okay? And so you think about how you would normally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, you would think 12, 13, but it's going to go backwards with negatives. So it's going to be 12 and 13 going to go backwards, and -11 would be in front of it. All right, so we want numbers that are less than -12. Well, that concept can be kind of hard. It's kind of hard to look at this and go, well, what's less than -12? Because negatives just can be kind of confusing. Now, the answer should be, -13 would be smaller than -12, but this is why we want x on the left. If you have your variable on the left, then this inequality symbol becomes an arrow pointing to the left, okay? Probably the biggest thing I see that confuses kids is they will always think of this as an alligator. So when I say it's pointing, they think of an alligator eating the 12 and that it's pointing to the 12. No, I need you to think of this as an arrow, okay? So this is an arrow, not an alligator. And it is pointing to the left. So we're going to draw an arrow, and we're going to shade to the left, like this right here. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at this one. So we're going to draw our line, circle our x, and I've got a 3. There's no symbols in between the 3 and the x, so this is invisible math, which means it's multiplication. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So we're going to divide by 3, and I have to do it to both sides, so I'm going to divide by 3. Okay, so these 3's will cancel out. I'll go ahead and bring this down. And 12 divided by 3 would be 4. And then these canceled out, so we just have the x. Now, on this one, I did divide, but I divided by a positive 3. So there is no rule about positive 3, dividing by a positive number, so we're not changing anything. Okay? So once again, just because we talked about multiplying and dividing by negative flips, it doesn't mean you flip it every time. It's very specific. Okay, now we did have a third rule, and it says that we want x on the left-hand side. Well, right now, x is not on the left-hand side. So what we want to do is we want to take this entire thing right here, and we want to flip it. Okay, so I want x to be on this side, I want 4 to be on this side. Now, the inequality is the thing that gets kids, is, if we're going to flip these two, I can't bring this down. So if I'm flipping the x and I'm flipping the 4, then the inequality symbol has to flip as well. Okay, so in the end, if it was pointing to the 4 up here, it's got to be pointing to the 4 right there. All right, so this is now my final answer, and we can graph this. So we're going to put 4 right in the middle. Now this does have an equal to bar, so we're going to do a closed circle, and then I'll go one number in front and one number behind. And so what direction is this arrow pointing? It's pointing to the right. So that's the direction of my arrow. All right, and then on this one, so we're going to draw our line. We're still circling our x. So once again, we have invisible math. It's being multiplied by -3. So how do I get rid of multiplication? Well, we're going to divide. So we're going to divide by -3. Okay, now those words right there, we're dividing by -3, means that we're going to flip our inequality symbol. So this is now going to flip and go from a greater than to a less than. And why did it flip? Because we divided by a -3. It doesn't matter what the answer is, and there's a lot of other things that could happen. The only thing that tells me that I can flip this is I divided by a -3, or if we would have multiplied by a -3. So the -3's cancel out, and we have x. 2 negatives here make a positive, so 24 divided by 3 would be a positive 8. And you can see right there, we ended up with a positive answer, and that wasn't the reason why we flipped it. So it was solely because we divided by a negative. All right, and then we'll graph this real quick, and we get 8. There's no bar, so it's an open circle, no equal to bar. And then what direction is this going? Well, it's pointing to the left, so we'll make our arrow go to the left. All right, and then you can see this on two-step equations. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. So we have circle our x. So between these two, the 5 is the one that's furthest away. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. So add 5. That cancels. And so we got 2x is less than 26. Then we're going to divide by 2, because invisible math means it's being multiplied, so we're dividing by 2, and we get x is less than 13. Notice we didn't do any flipping. It was a very basic problem. Nothing seemed to change. This is my answer right here. So you will still have a lot of these. Oh, I forgot what I was doing. You will still have a lot of these that are very basic. I don't want you to think all these are going to be hard. And we're going to do an open circle because there's no equal to bar. And then this is pointing to the left, so we're going to draw our arrow to the left. All right, and then our last one. Now this one is when it gets the hardest, okay? So you don't know it necessarily at the beginning, but you're going to see actually quite a few flips. So to begin with, we're going to draw our line and So here's our x. The one that's furthest away would be the 1. So we're going to subtract 1, subtract 1. So those cancel out. The signs are the same, so we're going to add and keep the sign. So it would be a negative 16. Use the calculator if you are not sure. And then we have negative 4x. Okay, so now we're going to divide by negative 4 because there's invisible math, which is multiplication right there. So divide by negative 4. That'll cancel these out. Now, we divided by a negative. So immediately when you say, matter of fact, I probably should have done it sooner, divide by negative 4, we immediately need to flip this. I'm ADD, so if I don't do it immediately, I'm going to forget. So this flips to a less than or equal to. Okay, so now the x comes down, and then two negatives make a positive, so 16 divided by 4 would make that a positive 4. All right, so we've already flipped this once, but now we got another issue. The x is on the wrong side. I need the x to be over here. So we have to flip the x and the 4, and if I flip these two, I have to flip the symbol. So this is going to flip back to a greater than symbol. So that is when it kind of gets confusing. How many of these type of problems are you going to see? Not many. You know, you're going to see a lot of basic problems. So I don't want you to panic if you're struggling with when do I flip it. You take care of the equation like you've always done. We're going to practice this all year long. You'll get better and better at this, I promise. Okay, so I don't want you to panic if you're struggling right now. I want to see that you're still doing well solving the equation. And if you're doing well solving the equation, I'm going to be a happy teacher. All right, so we have a circle on 4, and it's got a bar, so it's a closed circle. And then the arrow's pointing to the right. So I'm going to point this arrow like this. All right, hope this helped.